Hello Internet. Today I'm going to be ranking all 7 party members from Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. But before we get into the rankings, I'm going to have to discuss the rules and things to know moving forward. The first thing I feel I should mention is I haven't beaten Paper Mario Thousand Year Door yet, so I haven't gotten everyone to Ultra rank. Because of that, I'm going to be excluding any benefits gained by Ultra rank from this ranking. Maybe I'll make another video discussing those, maybe not, who knows. I don't think there are any other rules that need to be noted, so without further ado, let's get on to the list. Do I have to do this one? I guess so. Out of all 7 party members in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, Flurry is the only one that I actively dislike. I just don't get what's good about her. She's like the only party member whose second ability is just completely worthless. Gale Force takes 4 FP, which is a lot when you get her, and requires really good use of the action command to remove any of the enemies. And if you don't get the action command right, you've practically just wasted a turn and 4 FP, as it doesn't do any damage, and won't remove any enemies from the fight. Body Slam isn't much better, as it only does 2 damage to 1 enemy, which is fine, and it does 4 when you level up. Koops deals 2 damage with his regular attack and 3 on the first level up, and he's leaps and bounds better than Flurry. However, Koops is better mainly because the rest of his abilities are good. Lip Lock is fine, I guess. It costs 3 FP and deals 4 damage and heals Flurry 4 HP with a proper action command, which is fine. It also kind of works with her being a more tanky character than Koops or Goombella were, but by the time you upgrade Flurry, I just don't find any reason to use her. And her character isn't that interesting or entertaining enough to counter that either. Some might reject that with some of the backstory that can be found on her Mario wiki page, where it says that she was an actress. However, that argument just seems pretty baffling to me. I had to look up her character to get any kind of interesting information about her. And she doesn't bring up anything that would make me think she's an actor in her dialogue either. At least, not that I remember. So that just leaves her as a mildly flirty character in Mario's Party, which is a role that pretty much every other character in Mario's Party plays better than her. She is completely replaceable, as evidenced by the fact that she might as well have been replaced by Ms. Mouse. They're both mildly flirty characters who join Mario's Party and have an ability that has a chance to affect all foes. And Ms. Mouse plays that role better than Flurry ever could, and Bobbery makes a way better tank than Flurry could either. Overall, Flurry is just not good at anything. Now we're at the point where I like the characters. The Yoshi Kid is gained during the Glitzville tournament, and to be honest, he's a little too good for me to use. His normal attack with no upgrades deals 4 damage, kinda makes him feel like an easy mode. Keep in mind that the other characters who join you previously can only deal 2 damage in their base forms, and their upgraded forms can only deal up to 4 damage. And while that can't go through defense like the others could, that gets countered by his other ability. Gulp lets Yoshi Kid toss one enemy at another and can pierce any defense. And Mini Egg deals 1 damage per egg and inflicts the shrink status on the foe's hit. Oh, and by the way, these skills cost less than 5 FP. With all this power at Yoshi Kid's disposal, it's hard to avoid that he kinda feels like easy mode. That doesn't mean he's bad, or that anyone who uses him is a casual or anything like that. Just that he feels a bit too easy for me. To be honest, I don't really have much to say about his character, unfortunately. He's mostly just a hot-headed kid, but he is likable enough. I think he's worthy of this spot on the list. I must admit that this one would definitely be higher if I was accounting for the Ultra Rank upgrades in this video. With the Ultra Rank increase, she gains the ability Rally Wink, which inflicts the Fast status effect, which gives Mario an additional turn for a few rounds. I didn't even know this gave a status effect, because the battles have always ended before my next turn. Unfortunately, we aren't counting the Ultra Rank buffs in this video, so Goombella has to be left at number 5. That's not to be an insult to Goombella or to say she's useless or something. In fact, she's quite good, necessary even. Take for example her main ability, Tattle. Tattle shows you the health, defense, attack, and some advice on fighting the foe, if you complete an easy action command. In fact, it's so easy I've literally never missed it before. And it shows the health on screen while you fight. This is completely free, and until you get the Peekaboo badge, is practically required each time you encounter a new enemy. Unfortunately, other than that, Goombella isn't that good. Bonk is initially equivalent to Mario's base jump, which is good, but not great. And not being able to fight spiked enemies makes Goombella feel almost crippled when fighting spiked enemies. And multi-bonk is pretty much the same as Mario's power bounce, which is fine, but not really much of an incentive to use power bounce again. A side note, while I was researching, apparently there's an exploit where if you use power bounce and multi-bonk, that's like super overpowered. So, yeah. Luckily though, as a character, Goombella is quite entertaining. She is obtained briefly after starting the game. You find her being attacked by Lord Crump and his goons, so you, being the good guy, assist her. She then joins the party. But she's also an academic, which makes Tattle make a bit more sense than it does with Goombario, for example, especially since she pulls out a book to tattle on foes. Some might comment that it's not spelled out much that Flurry is an academic than that Flurry is an actor, yet I like Goombella and dislike Flurry. But I retort by saying that Goombella just feels a lot more like an academic than Flurry feels like an actress. And that may sound very subjective, which I mean, yeah, kinda, but I mean think about it. Goombella pulls out a book to learn information on foes. Isn't that all college students do? And if anyone says that's racist, I want you to know that my sister is part college student, and I have several college student friends, so I can't be racist. What was I talking about? Oh right, Goombella. Overall, Goombella is a good character who just doesn't have the best toolset with the abilities given. I kind of feel like she should be higher on the list, but given the rules of the list, I just can't justify it. Now this one really leaves a knot in my stomach, because I like Vivian's character a lot, but I feel like her abilities are just a bit too situational to be high on my list. So I guess I should just rip off the band-aid and begin with her abilities. I like that her default attack gives the fire ailment, but I feel like in a lot of circumstances damage over time isn't really much of a high priority, and dealing 3 damage at the point you get her isn't a huge achievement. I think that Veil can also be good in a lot of situations, but unless you have Quick Change equipped, it's just not worth keeping Vivian in the battle for defense, when you could have Koops attack the line of grounded enemies, or have Kid Yoshi eviscerate the foe. And while Fiery Jinx deals great damage, the 6 FP price is just too high for me to swallow. Okay, I've gotten the lame critiquing portion of this done now, so I can talk about all the things I like about Vivian, beginning with the story. Warning, there will be some light spoilers ahead and light discussions of abuse. Nothing major, but watch out. In the story, her first appearance is after Chapter 1, where she appears as one of the 3 Shadow Sirens, a trio of villains who try to defeat Mario and his crew along the game. Vivian, however, doesn't exactly need a redemption arc. Vivian's two sisters, Beldam and Marilyn, are, unfortunately, abusive towards her. It's mostly Beldam who does the abuse, but Marilyn effectively enables it, so I count that. In all of their plans, Beldam messes something up and then blames it on Vivian, and then threatens her with a vague punishment. Luckily, this ends when Mario gets his identity stolen by an unknown character, and helps Vivian find a bomb her sister forced her to look for. And then Vivian joins Mario, and she even stays after learning that Mario is, in fact, Mario. Golly, that sentence sounds stupid out of context. This game is also the most woke Nintendo game by far, because in most versions except the US release, it is stated, or at least strongly alluded to, that Vivian is a transgender woman. I would not be surprised if this game genuinely helps someone, whether it be with helping someone escape abuse or accepting their gender identity. I could easily see this character helping people in a real way, and that's about all I have to say about Vivian. On to the next entry. I realize that this is kind of a contrarian opinion, but let me argue my case before you execute me. I feel like a lot of people over-exaggerate the mediocrity of Love Slap. It only deals one less damage than Vivian's attack, which is significant in Paper Mario, but it's not a life-changer or anything. It also pierces through enemy defenses, which is normally reserved for super or ultra rank abilities. And while I have seen others experience jank with her, like I've seen her take damage when slapping a Pokey, I've never had any trouble with her base attack. And while earlier I complained about Gale Force with Flurry, I will have to concede and say that I've not found much use for Kiss Thief. I suspect that it could be pretty useful against an enemy currently holding an item, however, I've not yet gotten her to steal anything of value. However, by the time you get Ms. Mouse, you can probably pretty easily find some shine sprites you need to upgrade her, which means that you can get Tease. Tease requires you to barely avoid filling this meter. I see what you did there, Nintendo. I see. And if you do it properly, you inflict Dizzy on the foes, which is so good. Dizzy pretty much means you don't get hit by inflicted enemies. I mean, there's probably a chance they can still hit you, but in my experience, it just means you don't get hit by this guy for a turn or two. And I feel like I couldn't not mention Smooch, but that's an ultra rank skill, so I'll just have to say that it's really good, especially if you have FP Drain or Happy Flower equipped. But the main thing that makes this character in particular so good is that she is a character who's entertaining and enjoyable to adventure with. Miss Mouse is a world-traveling thief who is definitely into Mario, and is also the only optional party member. I'll tell you later how to get her, but for now, shut up and listen. The thing that makes Ms. Mouse so good is how simple yet enjoyable she is to watch. One look at her and you know what she's about. She steals valuable stuff and is probably flirtatious. If Vivian was enjoyable due to the amount of depth her character has, Miss Mouse is the exact opposite. She's one of those Johnny Bravo type characters where you can just put them somewhere with something to do and you won't get bored. Obviously, Ms. Mouse is not as entertaining as Johnny Bravo, as she wasn't designed for anything more than to say a few lines of text and smack your foes, but I'd definitely say they're in the same category. Okay, you have listened to me talk, so now I'll tell you how to get Ms. Mouse. After the 4th chapter, you can unlock Ms. Mouse by going to the Trouble Center in East Rogueport and taking the elusive badge Trouble. You meet this mysterious person on top of Zesti's house by exiting the top floor of the inn. She then tells you to find a badge in Hooktail's castle. In the room you fight Hooktail in. Stumble around until you find an invisible wall. Use Flurry for the last time and speak to Ms. Mouse again. With that out of the way, let's move on to the next entry. Now this is a character who I think just about everyone can agree on. Riddle me this. Who is a character who has fun action commands, can kill a whole row of enemies, and can give up to 8 HP via a shield? That's right, it's the guy we're talking about, it's him. I should have thought through this more. But yeah, as I said, Koops has a very powerful moveset that can be of use even when fighting air enemies. Well, one skill, but still. His Shell Toss deals a fair amount of damage to one grounded enemy. Power Shell deals the same amount of damage to the entire row of grounded enemies, which can end some fights in one turn. And Shell Shield is an amazing defensive move, which has saved my life a few times before. It can cover Mario in a shell with up to 8 HP if you do the action command right. When this is active, Mario takes no damage until the shell breaks. This ability has saved my butt a few times before, and is better than just about any other defensive ability in the game. These skills also have very fun action commands, which makes everything better. But another thing that makes Koops so good is just that he's really likable. Unlike Kooper from the previous game, Koops is a much more shy, cowardly Koopa. He's a lot like Luigi in a way. He also works very well in the chapter he's introduced in. 10 years before the game's events, Koops' father left to defeat Hooktail, but he never came back. Luckily though, Hooktail's stomach acid is very weak, I guess, as his father was merely stuck in his belly, and near the end of chapter 1 reunites with his son. I don't find it much of a tearjerker or anything, but it's nice that Koops has some emotional investment in this chapter, and it's nice to see him reunite with his dad. Other than that, I think I've said just about everything I need to. On to the next section. Okay, let's take a breath. Once you get to the last entry of a ranking video, all ambiguity disappears. You're either confused, happy, or upset. So let's take a breath. Admiral Bobbery is gained partway through Chapter 5, and has consistently been one of the characters I've been most excited to obtain when playing this game. He's probably one of the most thoroughly developed characters in the game, with a full backstory and character arc. But let's begin with his abilities. Bomb is a fantastic skill. It does a minimum of 4 damage to a foe, unless you miss the action command, which is pretty easy. It can apparently flip cleft enemies. I haven't seen it myself, but I trust the wikis. It doesn't make contact, which makes it less vulnerable to spiked enemies, and it disperses mist, which is so useful I can't even describe. So often before I had Bobbery, I'd always miss attacks due to mist, but when I have Bobbery in the field, when that happens, I don't even need to think about it. Just have Bobbery attack first, it's fine, don't even think about it. And Bomb Squad, while less powerful than Bomb, has plenty of uses. Bomb Squad allows Bobbery to attack enemies who aren't directly in front of him, cheaply and immediately after gaining Bobbery. Unfortunately though, I've not been able to get anything out of Holdfast. It's supposed to have Bobbery counter any direct attacks, but I don't think the skill is very good. Mainly just because there's been a lot of jank with it when I've played. There have been multiple times when Bobbery definitely should have counterattacked, but just didn't. I assume that's because a lot of attacks just don't have the direct tag, and therefore don't trigger the ability. You might be asking now, well, if you dislike 1/3 of Bobbery's moveset, why is he your favorite? And I say the reason is because I don't feel like rewriting the intro to this and Koops section so that it would fit correctly. But also, I'd say because of the depth that Bobbery brings to the game as a character. His story is very tragic and makes the cast feel a lot more three-dimensional. In his backstory, he used to have a wife named Scarlet, who stayed home while Bobbery was off at sea. One time though, Scarlet was ill and died while Bobbery was at sea. His wife wrote a letter for him while she was on her deathbed, but Podley, the owner of the nearby soda bar, couldn't get himself to give Bobbery the letter. Bobbery then blamed himself for Scarlet's death and vowed never to go to sea. It's really emotionally poignant. This really elevates Bobbery from no more than a gruff old sailor to a veteran of sea dealing with loss. And I think that's all I need to say on Bobbery. And that was my ranking of Paper Mario 1000 Year Door's partners, excluding the Ultra Ranks buffs. What did you think of it? If you want, you could write it in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe if you did. Have a good day.